stuff. Firing somebody because they violated a policy, but then promoting someone else for violating the same policy.
A friend of yours that does the same thing.
Yeah.
No. Let's, maybe we can single in on a case or something.
So let's talk about the David cases quickly. I mean, you got 7 clients that we have worked with, and out of those 7 clients, all have been run illegally on the David system thousands of times by hundreds of police officers. And some of the females that were run 20, 30 times by one male, just by one alone, several times, several different times. And you got one female officer that used the David system because she was being threatened by her ex, and she used the system a few times because she was worried about where this person was taking the child. And this new sheriff comes into town and fires her for it, but by the same token promotes an individual that illegally used the David system during his political campaign.
For campaign reasons,
purposes.
Yeah. Well, but the internal affairs investigation was nothing but a sham. And when you start looking about this stuff, when you've got an internal affairs investigator that can't testify because they've caught him lying too many times and he's got no credibility, and they put him in as a internal affairs investigator because he'll lie and fabricate it the way they want it. That's a problem.
Creative writing.
Yes.
They used to have classes called creative writing in the police academy. And I used to wonder, why would they call it creative writing? Isn't report writing supposed to be truthful and factual?
Sure.
And when you have police officers that know the facts, but they creatively spin it to become a potential crime when it's not,
well,
that's a crime in itself.
It's like, when I was on the job, they used to say, the individual was handcuffed and then we assisted him into the wagon. Well, anybody that knew the officers involved knew that the guy wasn't assisted into the wagon. He was handcuffed and they threw him in head first.
Yeah.
And they kicked him a few times on the way in. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they started making jokes about it. There was a 5-day waiting period before you can get a handgun. Then all of a sudden officers are laughing. They want to get a 5-day waiting period before you can get a camcorder. They were getting caught. And now with all these cameras around in all these different places, you're seeing how many times police officers brutalize people and do things. That's bad training. That's bad psychological, evaluation. That's no supervision. You can't allow that stuff to happen.
Well, it's like this culture that is so predominant today in law enforcement, where it's see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. When you see an officer doing something wrong, where it should be, if an officer does something illegal or improper, it shouldn't be hidden from the public, and the police officer that observed it should be rewarded for bringing the facts of that case to his administrator instead of being punished for it or ostracized.
That's just not going to happen.
For it.
That's just not going to happen as long as you've got this culture of let's keep crime off the streets and in the police department where it belongs.
Yeah. That's sad.
You were talking about it before. The police it's become an us against them mentality, and they lost track of their mission to protect and serve the people, and they do everything they can to screw the people. The police car shouldn't say to protect and serve, or they should be adding themselves on the bottom. It should say to protect and serve ourselves, because that's
true.
Yeah, that's all these people are doing.
It's getting more true all the time.
Yeah,
I was talking about this one time with someone else about the police academy instructing. You get in their police academy and you teach to these students that are young and impressionable, and they're coming up. They don't really know anything about police work, have very little life experience, and you're talking to them about cases, and you're talking to them about scenes you've been to, and how you're supposed to treat the public. I used to tell people all the time, the police officer cadets, so I really don't care what your sex is or your race is. I said, you have to understand that when you put that uniform on, your ideology has to become that of equality to everyone, regardless of your internal prejudices. If you have them, you have them, but you need to turn them off.
Yeah.
And you try to give them a sterile environment and a sterile understanding of what law enforcement's supposed to be. Then they go to an agency and they get put in a car with somebody that they call a FTO or a field training officer that makes a few extra bucks a month to train people, and it's really the only reason why they're there. They're not there because they want to train. They're not there because they want to teach good police work. They want to make a few extra bucks. And they have their own philosophy on how law enforcement should be conducted, and they poison the mind of this fresh recruit.
Sure.
So now they get out on the street and they're out there with this person for months. Eventually they're out on their own, and they get around on a shift with a crew of guys and gals that have their own philosophy. Once again, it's far removed from what ideology is supposed to be. And they get out there with this attitude, and it becomes a us against them mentality.
Yeah.
And that's not the way law enforcement is supposed to be conducted.
Well, it's supposed to be, earn the respect of the people. Years ago, people respected the police. Now they don't. There's so many people that have horror stories, false arrests. If you look at this show on television, Cops, these guys are talking down. These officers are talking down to people, and treating them like, in some cases, like they're garbage and mocking them. That's not. You're supposed to get rid of those prejudices when you're doing this, and supposed to treat everybody equally. And who are these policemen? They don't have a lot of life experiences. Just because the guy in the next squad doesn't like somebody because he's done something, so you have to treat that person badly? No, and if you don't, you get trouble from your fellow officers. They treat you like crap.
Yeah, you're not part of the team.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you're outside the scope of their reality, and that's the sad part with law enforcement that hasn't been scrutinized publicly enough, and the administration really doesn't care because their ideology is don't bother me. I don't need to hear about this. This isn't a problem until the lawsuit comes.
Yeah.
Oh, then all of a sudden it's a problem. And then all of a sudden they start looking for a scapegoat instead of doing the right thing. And that's doing proper training and proper supervision and making sure things don't happen.
But see, none of that will change until these police departments are stuck paying so much money in fines and so much money in lawsuits that the citizens get outraged and say, hey, stop doing that. It's costing us money.
Right.
Because that's the bottom line. These officers will try to cover up everything. If there's an attorney that goes in and files a lawsuit and they wind up getting a lot of money for somebody that was wronged by the police, then eventually it might change a little bit. In Milwaukee, they had these officers out there that were doing body cavity searches of individuals on the street. They'd pull down their pants and insert their fingers, and now they've sentenced a couple of them to prison. But the fact is, they don't know it's wrong to do that. It's every policy. You have to have medical or you have to have somebody with specialized training. It's got to be in a certain place where you have rubber gloves and things like that. You just can't do that stuff on the street. And now they're all mad because they have to pay the piper and they have to go to jail for doing that. They should never get out.
No, that's
and then what happens is, if you commit a crime, you'll get 20 years. If a policeman does it, they'll give him a year and a half. And it's got to be changed. Everybody's got to have equal punishment.
No, I agree.
As well as equal protections.
You also have these politically motivated prosecutions too. I remember a client who was going to run for sheriff against an incumbent and had previously been a deputy for that agency for 20 years, got a law degree, and then 6 weeks before the actual announcements for candidacy and everything were official, the sheriff's department decided to do a raid on this guy's house, supposedly for a child pornography case that they were working on for just a few weeks. Well, the amazing part about the case is the way they treated the whole family. They dragged these people out of the house and plant them in the front yard like, the house is on fire.
Like garbage, yeah.
And instead of keeping everybody inside. It was solely for embarrassment purposes. And then when they do a search of the house, the only thing they take is a laptop computer.
And they already knew that the stuff was on there because they helped put it on there.
They put it on there. They put it on there.
And all the other things they could have taken, which is proper procedure, to take any kind of computerized or digital form in there for evidence. They didn't take any of it because they knew where the stuff was. They put it on there.
Yeah, and they knew there was nothing on anything else.
Sure.
And it would have took too long to put it on everything else, so they just took the one computer. I did child porn investigations for years. We took everything that could hold photographs, video, anything. It went. The phone, junk drives, you name it. It all went. But no, they left all that stuff behind. And then they prosecute this guy in a federal court because the state court or the state prosecutor said, you don't have enough evidence to prosecute this case. So this is an amazing thing, is when the state prosecutor says, you don't have enough evidence to prosecute this case.
Then we'll take him to the feds because they'll prosecute it.
Well, we're going to go take it to the feds. So we'll go take it to the feds, and then the feds turn around and they say, well, no, you can't have that expert, you can't have this expert, because we're going to put you in prison. Essentially is what they said.
Yeah.
So no fair trial for this guy. Politically motivated.
It's sickening.
Period.
It's sickening.
But how can you get a fair trial in this country? I mean, if you don't have millions of dollars to defend yourself, you can't afford to.
You've got to have the archangels of justice. We defend you. What we're trying to do is set up a template so that other people throughout the country will do the same thing that we're doing. If you tell the truth and do it properly, enough people listen to it, things can change. You can ask people to vote for someone else. We don't tell them who to vote for. We can tell them who not to vote for.
Well, people don't do the proper investigation before they vote.